Here's what has happened. The city of Johannesburg has a new mayor, and the ANC's Dada Morero taking over the mayoral chain from his DA predecessor, Mpho Phalatse. But the DA has vowed to take this matter to court in an effort to reverse this week's changes. For more on the developments in the metro, we are now joined by Action SA Gauteng leader Bongani Baloyi and ANC Johannesburg spokesperson Vondo, Gauteng DA leader Msimanga, and public policy analyst Dr. Mathebula. And of course, as I mentioned, you're a part of this conversation as well via your thoughts tonight on that WhatsApp line. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. And it's an all boys choir today. Maybe we should have used a little bit of discretion and added a higher note or two in this conversation. But let's start here from the parties sitting here. Well, you're not in the coalition agreement, so let me start with these gentlemen first. Is this a situation where coalition partners are just being silly and willy-nilly wanting to reconfigure and renegotiate a coalition agreement on a whim? Right. You guys have an agreement in place. You signed in December. You fixed it in February when you brought in the Patriotic Alliance. And then all of a sudden you just decide, no, we don't want this. Change it.
Well, that's too simplistic. Let's consider the facts. You've got an agreement that is in place, which has a provision in the agreement to amend the agreement, right? So then you are able to exercise that clause to amend the agreement. That amendment of the agreement has been done twice. One, it was done when the DA brought in the PA into the coalition, triggering a number of positions to be lost and forfeited towards the PA. Secondly, it happened in Tshwane when there was a change of speaker in Tshwane from a DA speaker to a COPE speaker. So in this case, an opportunity arose as a consequence of the unfortunate events in Johannesburg. And we made a proposal in line with amendment of the agreement, which there's a condition for or provision for in the agreement. And by the way, what they don't tell you is that we accepted that we could not persuade the DA. And we accepted that as a consequence of that, we are going to vote for that candidate. So we voted in Johannesburg for the DA candidate. The party that did not vote for that candidate is the PA. So when you are caught up in this whole mix, you'll believe that the Action SA did not vote for the DA candidate, which is incorrect. But you'll also believe that it was incorrect of us to try and amend an agreement which has been amended prior, exercising a clause in the very same agreement. And when we lost, we accepted.
What triggered your proposal? Why did you have to come in and make this additional proposal to say, well, let's put forward an IFP candidate instead of the DA exercising its right as per the agreement?
Well, firstly, this is a coalition. Coalitions, to be sustainable, you also need a majority, but you also need power sharing. That's very important. In Johannesburg and Tshwane and Ekurhuleni, before we were able to correct the situation in Tshwane, we elected the mayors, the speakers, and the chief whips before there was an agreement. So after they were elected, an agreement was concluded. Only in Tshwane, because of the stability of the government and the numbers, were able to remedy it from a DA speaker to a COPE speaker. Now, as a consequence of the unfortunate events, we're saying now there's an opportunity. You don't need to reshuffle and do anything. Now there's an opportunity. There's a vacancy. And we believe that parties like ANC and PA are underrepresented in these coalitions. And we made a view and we supported, and other political parties actually in the coalition supported this. But we could not get the DA to move on their position, and we respected it and made a commitment to vote for that candidate. The question here is, what did PA do? And how does the fact that we came up with a proposal utilizing a provision in the very same agreement, how is that misconstrued as being silly? When we want stability of these governments, entrenching other parties, ensuring that there's inclusivity and participation, how is that so?
The DA saying, for this reason, because there is an agreement in place, for this reason that you guys signed this thing, for the reason that the agreement says you can't just wake up one day and willy-nilly decide that you are going to not follow the agreement as per what we all were sober when we signed this thing and agreed to. No, you're not going to take your proposal.
Thank you very much.
And I look at that and said, no, these guys are arrogant, so we'll punish them.
Well, we'll talk about the arrogance part a little bit later on. Let's start at the beginning. So, Bongani is correct to say there are clauses in the agreement that says you can change. But it's very clear how you do it.
Right.
You don't just do it on an ad hoc basis. I don't wake up tomorrow and say, I want to cause friction today. I'm going to nominate this one to come into a position.
Yeah.
You do it, and this is how it was done even in February. You do it in a structured manner.
Yes.
Then we've made a proposal to say, no, instead of looking at one position, it's almost a year that we've been in government. How about we have a look at overall? But what we needed to do was to then say, let's go over the period of the vote first, and then return into council with a speaker, and then we can then do the reshuffling if needs be. Now, what is not saying is that they didn't want to, because the PA was also interested in one portfolio that they were holding.
Yeah.
And that meant that they were going to lose that portfolio. And this is why they said, no, there's only one vacancy. And by the way, there was no vacancy. Because politically, as we were speaking, within the coalition, there was no vacancy. Because already we had agreed on who is, which position belonged to what party, right?
Yes, yes.
And then it was also agreed that when you go back, we will then do that, because it was the ANC and other opposition parties that
in simple terms, you're saying, as far as you were concerned, the DA had every right to exercise its right and who's going to occupy this position of the speaker. It was not in negotiation at the start. It was not on the table.
They brought two things.
Yeah.
One, they first say no, the position must go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Then we said no, you can't then chop and change willy-nilly. We've agreed. It cannot be done on an ad hoc basis. There is a process in which we can do this. And in fact, we said, because we are going into a year, let's look into a time where we'll be able to then sit and have a look at all the portfolios. Yeah. And if we need to reshuffle, we'll do it that way and then. Okay. That is the first thing. Right. The second thing, after then we've argued that, then they said, no, we don't like the person that you're putting forward. Then we said, but no, hang on. We need to be consistent here. You can't come, at one time and say to us, you cannot tell us who to put in what position.
Yeah.
If it's our position, we'll decide who goes into those positions.
Right.
Then we said, okay, we want to exercise that right. And then they said, okay, now you're being arrogant. We said, no, we're not being arrogant. Yeah. Okay, this is what we'll do. Yeah. We'll pull back that name. We'll push in another name and to see what you do. And then, they still continue to do what they did.
Yeah. I mean, he says that they heard your point and agreed with you and actually were prepared to vote with your candidate. What you failed to do was to convince the Patriotic Alliance. I think they seemingly were convinced, but the PA was not.
I raised this thing way before to say we need to decide whether we're having a coalition or we're building coalition politics or whether we're having kingmaker politics. Two different things. Kingmaker politics are people who come in, and Gayton McKenzie and Kenny Kunene were very, very clear. We're in it for money, we're in it for the position and for the power. If you're not going to give us the power, you're not going to give us, what we want, then we're out. We're going to the next person and see whether this person is going to give us what we want.
And you accepted that? You were clear on that?
No. I am saying we told them when we got into the negotiations with them. We said, well, it's not going to happen. They wanted economic development. They never got that. Yeah. They never got the economic development. Yeah. In fact, they're holding on to it, and this is the position that they want. But, this is why we are saying that when they came in, we said we cannot negotiate willy-nilly. Okay. If you're going to stick up to 2026, you need to make sure that we stick to the principles. Right. You can't come and negotiate with us and then go and negotiate a better deal somewhere.
Let's talk about the better deal. So they're saying you guys, you saw this whole thing happening here and you thought, we're going to go in here, and you came with your tricks and your treachery. Apparently, you are the ones who are cooking this deal in the background, and you triggered, more importantly, this desire for a renegotiation and a reconfiguration of this coalition. How did you do it? Tell us. Did you offer them?
Maybe the first point, Mr. Mdluli, just to clarify, I know you posed the question about the coalition agreements. The ANC is not new to coalition arrangements. I think in the past we had an experience, even during apartheid, of a patriotic front when we were out of the state power and when it was an apartheid regime. Fast forward, you come to the government of national unity, GNU. Yeah. And I think that the basis of the GNU is what helped us in 2019 to reclaim back the seat of governing in Johannesburg, because we used that model. So we have an appreciation of how coalition arrangements must unfold. And I'm sure you'll know that there was never instability in Johannesburg between the period the ANC was in charge with the late mayors, both Mayor Matongo, Mayor Makubo, Mayor Matongo, and Mayor Mwerani. And that's why today the parties that are in council in Johannesburg have an appreciation of how the relationship is supposed to unfold. AIC, Al-Jama, PAC, ATM, and all those parties that are there. So I'm just trying to put on record that there is an appreciation of understanding that the relationship of parties is always fluid, but how you treat.
The question
so
is,
so I thought I must.
Did you entice them? Did you give the minority parties positions and deals? Because Helen Zille writes, the coalition partner says, no, you guys can't come to us and negotiate just because somebody has come and given you a better deal and you're just negotiating your political position.
The first point we must make is that there are no outright winners in the 2021 November elections. And that necessitates that there has to be a coalition government. And we have an appreciation as the African National Congress that this is an era of coalitions, obviously post-2016. We can't be naive on that. Obviously, discussions are going to take place. We'll engage with any party in council. That is what has led to where we are. Obviously, we've raised issues about the governance and how the city is being collapsed by the DA-led government. I mean, we're on record about the financial issues in this regard, how the leadership of Democratic Alliance behaved, how they were not able to provide thought leadership in the city. I mean, they had no ideas. And part of the issues that the ANC was raising were exactly that. By the way, the motions were presented by the parties. African Independent Congress presented the motion against the Speaker. African Independent Congress submitted a motion in February this year, early this year. It is not the ANC that was instrumental in this. Obviously, we're a party that is serious about the state. State is one pillar that is very important as an instrument of changing the quality of life of the citizens. We can't be a party. In fact, it's in our character as a national liberation movement, but equally as a political party, because by virtue of our constitutional democracy, we contest the state power to ensure that we use the state power to change the living conditions of the people of Johannesburg.
Dr. Mathebula, these coalition agreements written with ink on water, really, I mean, it looks they're quite flexible. They can turn and change as and when. I mean, what is your sense on how tight these agreements are and what they stand on?
Look, these agreements are as strong as the politics that undergird them. The fact that this is a political environment, we should understand that all the guys that are there, they are politicians. They have political interest. They have political power interest, but they also have, and I hope all of them, interest of the community at heart. But when the time comes to wrestle for political power, they will always look at their interests as political parties because they have defined manifestos which make them to go out to the public and say, vote for us because we can do this for you. I mean, the gentleman from the ANC has just said it, that the ANC as a liberation movement has identified the state as a terrain with which they can use to implement their liberation movement objectives and how they are going to lead society through the power of the state or the tool of the state. And I think the DA also has that objective, Action SA has that objective, IFP and everybody. So we cannot run away from it. Actually, my theory is that South Africa, welcome to real politics. We have all these years been sitting in a world where post-liberation politics, where we're nostalgic about what the ANC has done for society, we're angry about what the history of the DA post-apartheid is, the history of the IFP, but we're now 28 years into a new democracy and new politics are being defined in our society. The interests of society are now determining the decisions of people in the ballot box. So what should have happened, I think, immediately after they saw that they have lower voter numbers, all of them, I think the political party should have sat down and said, is the executive mayoral system working for us? Maybe they should have considered a collective executive system where council elected the mayor itself, so that you don't give the mayor that power of executive authority that the executive mayor has. And council also elects the executive committee. And once that is done, then you keep the executive authority of the Johannesburg Metro in the hands of council, as the constitution says that the executive authority resides there. But because of beliefs in the executive power of the mayor by both political parties, unfortunately, they still want to keep a strong executive mayor, whilst they know that they are thin on numbers to actually sustain the executive mayor for the entire 5-year period. There are kingmakers, and this thing will be as fluid as the politics are. Looking at the current configurations in Joburg, and I think Tshwane and Ekurhuleni, there'll always be this stop-start. And with the ANC going to its conference, there's going to be more drama in these 3 metros for the Gauteng ANC to demonstrate that it is actually having power over the Gauteng province, so that it can bargain with that power in the national scheme of things for the candidates that they want to go into the NEC top 6.
We're going to come back to that and talk a little bit more in a moment on that. And of course, the question on certain strategic appointments in municipalities. And was the Speaker's position a strategic position, and therefore should it have followed a particular process as per the agreement that they have as coalition parties? Before the break, of course, we were looking at whether or not the system of coalition itself is what is at fault. So Msimanga raising the question of whether or not we're into kingmaker politics or coalition politics. I'll get Bongani Baloyi to weigh in on that in a moment. But the DA also raising the question of process, and this is what they're going to be challenging in court. Listen to what the Speaker, Colleen Mathebula, had to say about that particular sitting.
Indeed, it's been a very busy week. We've managed to carry out the business of council as we ought to, and I'm grateful that the councillors, all of them, came out, to attend the council meetings where I was voted in, and also the council meeting where Councillor Mpho Phalatse, was voted out as the mayor, and we've put in the new mayor of Joburg. I think it's something that was necessary, and indeed, the citizens of Johannesburg should now anticipate that they will be served. They will have a mayor who will listen to them. Now they have a mayor that will be going around in the communities to hear them and put in programs and plans to address their needs and concerns. I think that for us as the minorities, it is indeed a breakthrough, and I think we've done well for the residents.
That's newly elected Speaker of the Council in Johannesburg, Msimanga. She says both her sitting where she was elected Speaker and the sitting where Mpho Phalatse was ousted was as per process. It was business of the council as it should have been carried out.
No, not at all. First of all, that's a lie that all councillors were there. Actually, SA councillors were not there when the motion of no confidence against Mpho Phalatse was put forward. The DA had indicated that first of all, there was supposed to be a programming meeting, what was supposed to have taken place a day before. That programming meeting didn't correct, and therefore it couldn't have. No. I'm not being the benefits of land. You'll have your opportunity.
Yeah.
So they didn't correct. The programming committee didn't correct, and in fact, their own rules of council says that for an urgent meeting to take place, you need to give 72-hour notice, which didn't happen. There was an announcement a day before at about 1 o'clock for a sitting that is sitting for a council that is sitting the very next day. And these are some more things that will make their way to court. And to know that what they were doing was wrong, even when it was raised on the morning there, they were busy pushing to say, no, we are just going to vote, even when people were raising the objection that they can't hear because there was problem with the sound in the chambers and the recordings itself. She just continued to push on. In fact, then when they went to court, their argument in court was, well, there's no urgency now because in any way, council is already sitting and there's already voting that is taking place. So that, we then said, oh, So if the judge then says there's no urgency, then we have to talk to the merits and the legality of that actual sitting. And I've raised two things with you. There was supposed to be a meeting, a planning committee meeting, which is supposed to correct. It didn't correct. There is, secondly, the issue of what the law in council says, that you need to give 72 hours for an urgent council sitting to take place. That didn't take place. And these are some of the things that is going to be argued in the court of law.
All right, Vondo?
Yes, Mr. Mpho.
Two things. One, 72-hour notice, and the other one is the programming meeting that didn't correct.
The problem with the DA is that they don't read rules. Standing rules are very clear. Go to Rule 50 on the standing rules, subsection 3. It speaks about how the motions are supposed to be tabled. It also talks about Rule 55, subsection 1. It talks about the notice. There are 3 types of meetings that the standing rules describes. There's an extraordinary meeting, there's a special meeting, there's an ordinary meeting. This was an extraordinary meeting, which the speaker is allowed and permissible in terms of the rules of council to sanction that meeting, even if the programming does not take place, because the speaker's consent is key in this regard. The programming that Mr. Msimanga is talking about may sit or may not sit. However, we must put it on record that we must go to council and see. There is a programming meeting that took place on Thursday. That meeting
Did it correct?
No, it corrected. The DA decided to boycott the meeting. They did not come to the meeting. And this is contrary to what the ANC used to do. The ANC, irrespective of the position it was, and against all odds, has always participated in the council processes, even if the odds were against the ANC. No single meeting that the ANC boycotted there. So the programming meeting has taken place. It corrected. The DA boycotted the meeting, did not come to the meeting. The meeting proceeded. The meeting that was sanctioned and the notice was within the rules. There is no 72-hour thing that Mr. Msimanga is talking about in terms of the rules. There's no such. You read the rules. So the fellows, this is the point we've been raising, that they are not reading the standing rules.
Right.
They don't read the standing rules.
Let's ask Section say, why didn't you go to the council seat?
Well, we held the view that that is an illegal meeting, and our councillors did not go. But I must also make the point that in listening and following the conversations around this, what becomes interesting for us is consistency and asking the question to determine whether the case is strong or not to some extent. When the acting city manager called the first meeting to elect the speaker, there was no programming committee. It may well be the case that because at that stage there was no speaker, but there was no programming committee that said to consider that, but it went straight through to council. But that is for the courts to determine. Here's our view with the status. We are happy being opposition. The DA can continue, but to what end? Because there's no longer a coalition. So establish a legal principle and get it corrected in court for 4 days later to be corrected properly. Maybe that's fine as a matter of principle, but there's no coalition intact. Action SA has resigned its fact that we're going to be itself to the fact that we're going to be opposition, that there's no longer a coalition in City of Johannesburg.
Right.
It's every party for itself. Right. So we are going to lead from the opposition benches. We're going to make inputs, substantive inputs, and ensure that we hold the ANC and the governing coalition to account. That's the position of Acting SA, because the residents want something. So this court battle for nothing at the end and 4 days victory, and then to what end?
So what do you think then is at fault here? Is it the system of coalition at fault, as you're saying there's no coalition? That means this thing that you guys had agreed on in December 2021 fell apart?
No, the coalitions work. You see, we are building the institution of coalition in Gauteng. And part of the learnings that is coming apparent to us, number one is that you need to accept that in coalitions there's a small party and big party. It's a very important principle. Power sharing is a second important principle. And also dealing with genuine concerns raised by members of the coalition in a manner that does not antagonize them. So when we raise a valid view that we think in this situation we must pursue a different route, and you want to exercise a clause in their contract to go a different route, and we advance a very strong argument, other members support this argument, and the DA refuses, but we still agree that because there's no mutual agreement, we are going to hold firm where we are and support your candidate. And worst of all, they wanted to bring a candidate who was voted out. I mean, The coalition agreement itself says you must consult the parties with the candidate you are bringing. And everybody raised a reservation. We did not say we don't want it. We said we've got serious reservation about your candidate because there's genuine issues of mishandling of council meetings.
Yeah.
So we must also be honest and speak to the fact of his performance in council and the extent to which councils were functional, and also some of the key appointments of the council secretary.
Yeah.
Those were genuine substantive issues that were raised. And you see, when you are defensive and you don't want to appreciate that people are raising these things, you believe that genuinely you've got a birthright to these coalitions and the key positions. Other members are only subservient to you. That is incorrect.
Yes.
And I hope this learning really gets us to reflect deeply about what we did wrong collectively, but equally that arrogance has no space in this. No one won.
Yeah.
No, there's no party that won. So we are compelled by the outcome of elections to work together. And in this case, we couldn't.
Mr. Msimanga, let me take a break. I'll come back and I'll give you an opportunity so that you can expand a little bit on that. And I've got some WhatsApps that are coming through as well, which I want to get to so that you guys can address them. Still with us, SA Gauteng leader Bongani Baloyi, ANC Johannesburg spokesperson Chris Vondo, and of course the leader of leader of Democratic Alliance in Gauteng, Msimanga. Take your thoughts when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. It seems parties are no longer in a coalition agreement of any sort at this particular point, while the Democratic Alliance is going to court to challenge that sitting that saw Mpho Phalatse being ousted as the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg. Still with us, Gauteng leader of Action SA, Bongani Baloyi, the ANC Johannesburg speaker, Chris Vondo, and the leader of the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng, Msimanga. So you wanted to respond to those things. One, first respond to the question of the inconsistency in what you're raising around the extraordinary seating that was called and whether the programming should have been there. But the second thing is what Mr. Baloyi is raising here of there is no small party, and there is this mentality within the DA that other parties are small and therefore you guys will always muscle your way.
I don't know where this idea of anybody wanting to muscle anybody comes from. When we went there, we could have easily said we're bringing in the lion's share of the votes and therefore it should be proportion to the number of seats that you get to have on the executive. It's not the case. If you look, there are parties that are coming with one member, like what we had with COPE in Johannesburg, holding a position there. In Tshwane, the speaker is a one-party or one representative party. And we have said that is how we're going to do, and we have been doing this. We have said, and I'm repeating this, we have said if you want to change the conditions of the sharing of positions, you can't do it on an ad hoc basis. Sit down, look at it, and then say this is how we are going to change, and this is what we are proposing. So that is the first thing. The second issue, Bongani says, there's no coalition, but his leader, his chairperson today was reaching out to then say, when are we having the next meeting? So I don't know whether they are talking to each other or, he's been excluded from the engagements that are taking place within the...
It's not the DA. No, not the DA.
You had an opportunity and nobody disrupted.
So the same leader that... John Stays and just on Friday was saying this man is only interested in insulting the Democratic Alliance. He never says anything about the ANC.
I'll tell you.
He's going to sit in a meeting. What's
I'll tell you that. I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So the Action SA comes in a meeting, in a COC meeting. Michael Bowman makes a proposal and says, tomorrow nobody must communicate. We will only release a statement that is coming from the whole, the joint parties. We agree on that. The very next morning, 6 o'clock, Herman Mashaba is on a radio station lambasting the DA. We write to the COG and say, well, we reserve the right to then respond because we cannot have a situation where your own chairperson makes a submission which is agreed to that we will not be communicating, but there will be a joint statement that everybody will see and agree to. By the way, that same statement is even jotted down by Mark Beaumont.
Yeah.
So in one end, you're doing something, and then on the other end, you go and lambast the same people that you claim, to be in coalition with. So that for us then shows who's the bully, who's then being arrogant. And this is not the first time where we agree on something as part of the coalition. Yeah. And then the leader of Action SA goes out and does exactly the different or the opposite of
quick one before we run out of time. The other issue that is being raised is what was raised by the minority parties anyway, that whatever it is that you do, you're only delaying the inevitable. So if you have not won the Patriotic Alliance over, the ANC would still have its mayor then. You would have gone to court at that particular
That is fine. Yeah. We are people that believe in the Constitution. We believe in democratic processes. But we are also saying that if you're going to do something, do it, do it right. Do it by the book. So even if we lose at the end of the day, but we shouldn't set a bad precedence in which, things are done illegally and then we legitimize those. Let us make sure that things are done and they are done legally, that even if you do it and then we lose at the end of the day through a vote in that council, so be it. But then things would have been done, using the rule of law, and it doesn't set a bad precedence going forward. But, one of the things that I think will be also of interest is that, when we're talking now about power sharing, are we going to, again, continue with the kingmaker politics, or are we going to be looking at coalition where we're saying this is the agreement that we have in terms of the positions that we share, and then going forward, our concentration should be on serving the people. You can't, chop and change whenever you feel. You get married, and somebody, after you get married, then somebody says to you, but I want to introduce a girlfriend into the marriage midway.
It looks like at this point you're going to have to settle with being in the opposition.
Oh, we've been there. We've been there for a very, very long time. It's not something that, we're scared of doing. We've been there for a very, very long time. We have been, the reason why South Africa has not fallen, apart is because we have been able to keep the ANC in check for a very, very long time. There are things that have fallen apart right now. As we were driving in here, there's no electricity, and then we are told that there's a new board that is being brought. We're told about thought leadership. I don't know what is thought leadership when I don't know what is thought leadership when everything that the ANC has touched, the ANC has touched,
they are saying the ANC, this is a coordinated attack on Mpho Phalatse, who has done nothing wrong. In fact, has done everything right. 71% of her targets have been reached.
Yeah, the problem is that there's no thought leadership in the Democratic Alliance. Joburg is a very sophisticated city. It's revered and respected internationally. So you can't want to ignore the foundation laid by Mayor Masondo. You can't ignore the work and beautiful work done by Mayor Tau, contrary to the narrative that DA is pushing. Go to Soweto today. Soweto is a different story. It is a test case of a democratic government that has been able to run government. Look at Soweto, look at Deep Slot, look at Ivory Park. These are townships that were built post the democratic dispensation. The amount of investment that has been here. The leadership of the city made commitments about thought leadership. These guys came in there, they took a GDS, a trajectory of a developmental paradigm that will take this city for the next 30 years to the next level. It defined 3 decades. It said we're going to raise 2011, 100 billion for the infrastructure. They come there, they speak about infrastructure backlog. They have no idea on how to generate. This city of Joburg, under the leadership of the ANC, got awarded a green bond, the first city in the continent that got a green bond, listed in the green bond.
And what have you done with it?
Exactly.
No.
That's a good question.
Corridors of freedom. Look at the amount of development in infrastructure. Go to just the area there in Rivali. There are beautiful facilities there. There are clinics. When the guys came in 2016, they decided to stop everything under the pretext of corruption. And in fact, the reality now is that there are many people that were said to be corrupt that are coming back, and they're not reporting those statements. The ombuds of the city went to court under the pretext of being purged by this leadership of a democratic alliance.
Let's wrap it this way. Dr. Mathebula, what is the future for the 3 municipalities, judging by what we've seen happening in the city of Johannesburg?
The future of the municipalities is that they are still going to be hung in the next local government elections. It's a reality that they should face. It started in 1994. What we need, unfortunately, is that the 2 major political parties, especially the largest one, the ANC, needs to improve its capability to work with a coalition government. The ANC has the legitimacy on what they call thought leadership. They have led a lot of thought leadership in the country. The DA can't deny that, except that the DA needs to know that the thought leadership that the ANC has put in there, whoever takes over needs to continue so that society does not suffer from party political differences. Yes, it is true. The thought leadership that went into the city of Joburg, it's impeccable. If you look at what happened in Joburg, what happened with the Gauteng and all the infrastructure that came there, it shows that there was a government that was doing well there. But unfortunately, that government, as it was doing well there, it was making a series of national and provincial mistakes that made it to lose the support of the community, including the toll gates and all other things. So the DA must not think that the Johannesburg that it is winning because the municipality of Joburg failed. No, it is winning because brand ANC is in a crisis, but not Johannesburg city management with the officials that are there. They are revered all over the world for what they've done. What the DA can do well, and all other parties, is to say, what are the things that Joburg had planned? There's a cities network, documents that are there, Salga documents, what Parks has done, and all those things. So until our political parties start putting the interest of developing the city as what needs to be done. The same in Tshwane. What Sputla has done with a number of things, what Sputla has tried to do in Tshwane, what the DA needed to do is to dust where Sputla has stopped and take that glory and move forward.
Dr. Mathebula, we are completely out of time. Let's leave it there for tonight. Much appreciated, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for coming on In Focus tonight. Continuing a moment on In Focus, in the next hour, we'll read some of your messages that have come through, but we'll also discuss what inspired citizenship in South Africa really looks like. Stay with us.